This is a nice little insight for all of you guys over at Patreon. As you saw, we scanned the body of the car with the high-end Pentascanner $30,000 unit, but we also have this $6,000 unit that we were given on loan to try out. The cool part is we're going to use this for the engine bay. Why? Well, a couple reasons why. One is that it helps me conceptualize where the hoses are going to go, how big the radiator can be, how big the intercooler can be. We've got space situations. But not only that, when we go to print the 3D models of the larger version of the car, they'll have working little pieces inside of it. And of course, they'll be modeled straight off of the car. While we're doing this, we're also figuring out geometry on certain aspects of this. And of course, some of you may know that like NASCAR and companies, or I think F1, uses 3D scanning in the process to make sure that the car is straight and narrow and passes all their tests. So 3D scanning certainly has a place in automotive operation. What we're going to do is take off the turbo blanket, because turbo blankets suck to be scanned, they just don't work. And we're also going to be using the existing dots for the body. That's why I didn't wash the car off yet. We're going to use the existing dots for the body to line the internal scan up with the external scan, because I don't need to rescan the body, but I do need to reference it to where it is on the car. What's really interesting is that, again, these were used for a totally different scanning technology. That uses laser. This is like a QR light code. I'll start scanning it, but I know what's going to happen. I can tell you this already, is that the body has the dots. The frame and internal aspects of the vehicle do not. So as we go, we're going to be adding dots. And the neat part about these sort of things, which is called Peel 3D if you guys want to check it out, what the neat part is that it picks it up even after the fact. If you've scanned an area and then add a dot, it just adds the dot. Of course, if you start taking it away, it gets a little weird, but it still can figure it out. Nice part about this compared to the 3-rotor scanning, 3-rotor has tons of wires and looms and weird reflective surfaces. These are all the major components of the car that are all simple to scan. So we're going to start, blow Jarrett's mind, by scanning the body of the car. And there you go. You can see it's not nearly as accurate as the laser, but you can scan this car within, I think it's 1 or 2 millimeter accuracy over the entire vehicle. Yes, there we go. Yeah, so you can see the body, which again, I'm just doing more for entertainment aspects. You can see that the body is scanning in quite nicely. So here's where we start working our magic. And okay, you can see even without the dots, it's already freaking out. Okay, back into dot land. It's going to lose its bearings. It's losing its bearings. We're going to go into the body of the car. And it's picking up a considerable amount of it. Mind you, this is again without any of those little dots. Oh, that is really, I'm not joking, that's really impressive. We're going to be hitting all of these from multiple angles because we want to get gotta move that closer. Gotta get some of these tubes figured out. I'm genuinely more impressed, and this is very, very impressive. It's gonna get pissed if I lose position in the engine bay, it's gonna get pissed. Yep. Okay, so we have to start at a known spot. You can see it not knowing where it's at. Without the dots, look at that. That's without dots. You can see I'm looking at the shock. You can see the coil right there, but it's not smart enough to necessarily figure out where it's at. Sometimes it gets pretty smart, but watch this. I'm gonna go over here, and sure enough, it picks up where we're at. So I'm just filling in some of the body around the engine bay. See how it lost its position? We'll find it again, and there, it's back in spot. Okay. What I think is really impressive, it's categorized all those, but this is such a unique combination of dots that it takes a second and then it realizes it's in a totally different spot. That's really impressive to me.
So basically, like you're traveling in like unknown territory. It's scanning. It's trying to figure out where it is.
Yeah.
And then you can go back, and now it knows where all that is because you went back to the dot.
Yeah, so in this case, what you see is that we are starting with a known spot and kind of painting out from there. It's kind of like it takes one step and then a next step. It's all relative, but as soon as you start losing your way out there, you have to kind of come back to a known area. Or what I was doing on the 3-rotor, I was getting to an area where I was starting to have problems, and then I put a couple dots in that area, so I could basically always have a leap to go from, okay, this section of the engine to this section of the engine.
A flag behind.
Yeah, exactly. So I go back to that one instead of going all the way back to the beginning. Because I had it when I was scanning the 3-rotor without any dots, that I would lose a position, and then after a couple seconds of trying, it would lock back in. But it is very processor intensive, and we got these dots. Why not use them?
How does it know not to scan the ground?
Oh, watch it, Will.
Oh, well.
We gotta get back on the car. So we'll go down. There it is.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, so what you end up doing is you actually say where the base layer of the scan is, and it cuts everything underneath that off. Yeah, look at, this is one of my favorite things. As I twist the scanner, you can see the rest of the car just in the sensitive. Yeah, isn't that cool though? You can see it twisting the car all around. That's just badass to me.
That is very cool.
Okay, what I'm gonna do is, since we're running out of positions to start, we're gonna put some dots in the engine bay, start from here, and then go back up the dots. Yeah, the body we've already seen, but you can see it's kind of a fake job though, because look at like that tube chassis right there. You're only seeing the part we scanned, even though we know it exists. It looks good from out here, but remember, we can only scan what's visible. So once we go to the bottom side, it's all fake show.
Do you ever fully 3D scan it? Like,
yeah. So
like, how would you get like inside all these coils and?
Yeah. So for example, take a look at this. I scanned the entire front differential as a piece outside of the engine, and you can see I had to do some cleanup work to get that working. So in that case, you want the full 3-dimensional ability to scan it all. Or if it's a known piece, like say it's this tube right here, we can scan part of it, and we already know its dimension. We know this is a 2-point-something inch diameter tube, so then we just recreate it in CAD, because it doesn't matter. The variations in it don't matter. You know, if it's slightly bent or whatever, that's not the point of the CAD scanning. The point is to get its position relative to everything else. This is going to be interesting, because what I'm going to try to do is kind of start here, adding dots, and then drop onto the frame. It's going to be kind of tough because the scanner knows when you're doing that. Put a couple of this. So we have a place to start on the frame. We don't need to scan the turbo in because I have the model from Garrett, but we do need to know where it is positioned relatively. As soon as I go over the area that didn't have dots, they'll start popping up in a second. Right there, there's one. So right about here, oh yeah, see it popped up on that frame, the tube frame.
Yeah.
Nope, another one popped up on the turbo. There they go. They just popped up. So now that I have that, I can kind of do this, and as long as I'm keeping them in the light, I can now fill in more information on the chassis. So I'm not worried about my suspension components because they were cut from CAD. So I just need to put them in a closer eye and make sure I have them in the right spot. So that's, see how much more information that gave us? Because it was certain on where it was at.
Just doing a really good job at getting the exhaust.
Yeah, is it?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, so the exhaust is tarnished enough. So something to keep in mind is that the light emitted from here, if you're scanning something like this, the light has to be in a triangle to about right here. So you'll notice that, like, for example, I was scanning the bottom of the turbo, and there's nothing on the picture because the light was being blocked by this. So it was seeing the light, you know, from here it was seeing the light up here, scanning that, but it couldn't see here. So you have to kind of turn it around and be a little creative on all of that. Something else we really need to scan is the position of the engine, because the engine dictates the position of the transmission and so on. It's all kind of a cascading effect. And it's nice to know the exact length of all the headers because of the position of the turbo to the rotors. All relative positioning matters a lot. One of the things that happened with this build that was a very difficult issue is that because of the front engine plate, when I originally approximated the engine, I didn't put the engine plate on there, where the oil pump and shit like that is in the front of the engine, or coolant or whatever, all that part. What happened? That ended up taking the place of where the steering rack could be. Had I known that, or scanned all these things in, we would have avoided that. So now the steering rack's in front of the drivetrain and creates a whole host of problems. Yes, you see the shadow that right on that tube because of the cantilever is causing a shadow, so it can't scan anything on the tube where the cantilever is. You can see the tip of the turbo sticking out of the right there. You can see that little bit of turbo sticking out of the hood. So we can estimate how to build a hood based on the turbo position. You can do these in sections as well, just to save memory. I've noticed the more dots you have, the more wild and fast you can get while scanning. Oops, too close. I can't thank you guys enough for any of the support that you've done for this. The project would not be possible. I can't repeat that enough. So as of right now, I have to spend about $10,000 on a rear differential setup. We've switched that up a little bit because we found out that the previous one will not hold the power. So I've got to get that ordered. What that means is the whole rear of this vehicle is about to get gutted. And within probably the next 2 or 3 days, we'll release another short video of us taking the whole front end off of this car. This part's done. We now can take the skeleton and show it what it is. So body's getting worked on right now. I didn't like the first version of the body that was presented to me. We're also doing the aerodynamics on it. We've got a lot of good things going on. So the rear of the car gets gutted, the suspension's done. So then we have a vehicle without an engine, and that engine is also coming up soon. But because of this, we've been able to push Abel further and further out of the envelope to get him to get that engine done.